Gather round, folks, because I'm about to take you on a journey back to one of the bloodiest chapters in our nation's history, the American Civil War, from 1861 to 1865. This isn't just a dry recounting of battles and dates. It's a true story woven from the lives of ordinary people thrust into extraordinary chaos, laced with fascinating facts that even history buffs might not know. Picture this: a young nation, barely a century old, tearing itself apart over slavery, states' rights, and the very idea of unity. We'll follow the arc from the first shots fired to the final surrender, uncovering secrets along the way that reveal the war's gritty, surprising underbelly. Settle in. This'll take about 10 minutes to tell. Our story begins in the humid dawn of April 12, 1861, at Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina. The United States was already fracturing. 7 southern states had seceded after Abraham Lincoln's election, forming the Confederate States of America under President Jefferson Davis. Lincoln, a lanky lawyer from Illinois with a penchant for folksy wisdom, he once called Davis Jeffy D in private letters, refused to recognize the secession. Fort Sumter, a Union-held island fortress, became the flashpoint. Confederate forces demanded its surrender, but Major Robert Anderson held firm. At 4:30 a.m., the rebels opened fire. Not at the fort's walls, but curiously at a stray Union flag fluttering in the breeze, as if symbolically striking down the stars and stripes first. The bombardment lasted 34 hours with no deaths from the shells themselves, but it ignited a war that would claim over 620,000 lives, more Americans than in any other conflict. As armies mobilized, the realities of war set in fast. Few realized that disease, not bullets, was the true killer. For every soldier felled in battle, 2 more succumbed to illnesses like dysentery, typhoid, and measles, often in filthy camps where hygiene was a luxury. Over 238,000 died from disease alone, compared to 215,000 in combat. To combat this, the Union established the first-ever ambulance service in 1862 under General George B. McClellan, revolutionizing battlefield medicine by rushing the wounded to field hospitals instead of leaving them to fate. And speaking of innovations, the U.S. Army even invented the hip pocket during the war, a simple sewn pouch on trousers for carrying essentials like tobacco or letters from home, a design we still use today. Let's zoom in on one of the war's early horrors, the Battle of Shiloh in Tennessee, April 6-7, 1862. Union General Ulysses S. Grant, a scruffy tactician who'd later become president, faced off against Confederate forces led by Albert Sidney Johnston. The fighting was brutal. Over 23,000 casualties in 2 days, with fields soaked in blood under a relentless rain. But here's a bizarre fact few know. In the aftermath, soldiers noticed their wounds glowing faintly in the dark, like eerie lanterns. These angel's glow injuries healed faster than others, baffling doctors at the time. It wasn't until 2001 that scientists figured it out. The glow came from a bioluminescent bacterium called Photorhabdus luminescens, which thrived in the cold, muddy conditions and fought off deadlier infections. Amid the carnage, communication was key. Both sides used carrier pigeons trained to fly hundreds of miles back to base, with tiny messages rolled in their legs, and even dogs dashed through enemy lines with pouches around their necks, dodging bullets to deliver intel. As the war dragged on, heroes emerged from unexpected places. Take Harriet Tubman, the escaped slave turned Underground Railroad conductor. In June 1863, she became the first woman to lead a major military operation in U.S. history, guiding Union troops on a raid along South Carolina's Combahee River. Armed with her knowledge of the terrain, Tubman and her forces torched plantations and freed over 720 enslaved people in a single night, many of whom joined the Union cause. Yet, black soldiers like those recruits faced blatant injustice. They were paid just $10 a month compared to $13 for white troops, and $3 was deducted for clothing, sparking protests and eventually leading to equal pay in 1864. Hundreds of women also disguised themselves as men to fight. One, Dr. Mary Edward Walker, served as a surgeon and spy, becoming the only woman ever to receive the Medal of Honor. The war's innovations extended to the skies. Union forces pioneered aerial reconnaissance with hot air balloons like the Intrepid, where balloonists floated 1,000 feet up to spy on Confederate positions and direct artillery fire via telegraph wires dangling to the ground. On the Confederate side, quirky leaders added color. Take General Thomas Stonewall Jackson, a brilliant strategist but a notorious hypochondriac. He believed one arm was longer than the other, so he'd raise it during marches to balance the blood flow. Avoided pepper because it weakened his left leg, and constantly sucked on lemons to soothe his dyspepsia, earning him odd looks from troops. By 1863, the tide turned at Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, the bloodiest battle with 51,000 casualties. But did you know Robert E. Lee's Grand Arlington estate overlooking Washington, D.C. was seized by the Union and turned into a cemetery to spite him? Today, it's Arlington National Cemetery, where over 400,000 veterans rest, after Lee's family sued and sold it back to the government. Amid the fighting, immigrant stories abounded. 1/3 of Union soldiers were foreign-born, including Irish and Germans, making the Army a melting pot. Even the famous Siamese twins, Chang and Eng Bunker, joined at the sternum and, living as Confederate sympathizers in North Carolina, sent their eldest sons to fight for the South, though the twins themselves were exempted from the draft due to their unique condition. Lincoln, steering the Union through it all, had his own close calls. In 1864, while riding to his summer retreat, a sniper's bullet whizzed past, knocking off his stovepipe hat, foreshadowing his fate. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, freeing slaves in rebel states, but few know he carried a $5 Confederate bill in his wallet, perhaps a souvenir from his visit to fallen Richmond, featuring Jefferson Davis's face. Canada played a shadowy role, too. Confederate spies operated from Montreal, plotting raids into Vermont that strained U.S.-Canadian relations. The war's end came on April 9, 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse, where Lee surrendered to Grant. But tragedy struck days later. On April 14th, actor John Wilkes Booth assassinated Lincoln at Ford's Theater. It was part of a larger plot. Accomplices targeted Vice President Andrew Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward, too. Shockingly, the cipher code found on Booth's body matched the one used by Jefferson Davis's Confederate government, fueling theories that the assassination was ordered from the top. In the aftermath, the nation rebuilt amid profound loss. Mourning rituals were strict. Widows wore black veils for up to 2.5 years, while widowers needed only 3 months with a simple armband. The war killed 2% of the U.S. population, with the average soldier just 23 years old. It birthed the Medal of Honor, awarded more times during the Civil War than in World Wars I, II, and Vietnam combined. This war wasn't just about North versus South. It was a crucible of human ingenuity, suffering, and change that shaped modern America. From glowing wounds to balloon spies, these hidden facets remind us how history's shadows hold the most illuminating truths. If nothing else, remember, in the face of division, unity prevailed, but at a cost we still feel today.